and welcome everyone. My name is Ashwin and I oversee marketing at MoEngage. We have Anna here with me. Anna heads consulting for AppFollow. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hopefully everyone who has tuned in today is keeping well and staying safe during these difficult times. The COVID pandemic has altered a lot of things that we earlier took for granted. But perhaps the worst outcome of a crisis like this is the economic recession or the slowdown that's facing us all. A month ago, we actually teamed up with the folks at AppFollow to analyze the aggregate behavior of millions of app users across the world. And we also spoke to 50 plus marketing and product leaders across some of the largest and fastest growing consumer brands. When we actually spoke with these 50 plus marketing and product leaders, one common thread that surfaced was, what does growth mean in the new normal? How do I react to the rapidly changing consumer behavior, shrinking marketing budgets, and at the same time, how do I show growth? There's a lot of advice out there about going back to the fundamentals of marketing or measuring real metrics as opposed to vanity metrics. And theoretically, it's perfect advice. It all makes sense. But what does it really mean in action? How do you go about identifying the right set of metrics during these times? And more importantly, ensure that the rest of the organization can align towards those metrics. And that's what we will try to cover in today's conversation. The teams at both AppFollow and MoEngage, we have worked with marketing leaders across many consumer brands in Europe, Middle East, and Asia. And we will try to share some practical examples and frameworks of what we have learned from working with these marketing leaders and brands. So I hope it's helpful. And just a housekeeping announcement, if you have any questions at any point during the conversation, please do type in your questions in the Zoom window. We will answer those questions at the end. And this is an open session, so please do feel free to ask your questions. We will try to cover all of them during the session or at the end of the session. And if we run out of time, we will try to answer your questions over email as well. So having said that, I would love to hand it over to Anna. Anna, it's all yours.
Hi, guys. Thanks, Ashwin. Hello, guys. Also, thank you for joining us today. And just a quick introduction while I'm sharing my screen. My name is Anna, and I'm head of consulting department at AppFollow. Probably those people who are not familiar with AppFollow, we are one-step platform to execute your app strategy. So including app store performance monitoring, mobile marketing measurement, and reputation management features. So my part of this discussion will focus more on the organic growth in terms of user acquisition and like marketing side. And before we move forward to the specific questions and metrics, let us evaluate why marketing is important. So if you build it, they will come. This is the mindset of lots of developers and interpreters, and it has to be true, right? Unfortunately, it's a wrong thing, because like to stand out among the countless competitors on the app stores, you must get every reasonable advantage out there and capitalize on it. So the main point of marketing activities is to find these whales, these precious users who will not only enjoy your product, but also pay for it. And here we come to the whole journey of product process. So first of all, let us take a look at this whole process, because each and every step is very important, and each step has its own North Star metrics and goals to achieve. So on the first stage, lots of developers are focusing on the product overall. So while the beginning, it's important thing to track the internal metrics as ANR and crash statistic, the trial activations, retention, etc. So those users that you acquire for your beta testing or a soft launch might bring you some essential insights. And this is really necessary thing to do, first of all, to validate the idea of the product, and of course, to build the right customer journey map. After this cast dev period is ended, and after all these pilot testings are coming to the end, it is time to make your product alive and to acquire more users. So here we come to the marketing part. I will not focus on it now. I will cover it a little bit later. And after you acquire lots of users, here is this consideration step. So users are testing, are trying your product, and basically here they are deciding whether they want to purchase and to buy your product or not. And here is very important thing to identify the right price, the right place, and the right moment to show this purchase window. And of course, most valuable users are paying users. And more often, the most paying users are very often the loyal users of your product. So here we come back to this development of the product stage and make some improvements to succeed, to satisfy your users that you gain at the end. So each part of this journey is important. And marketing, of course, is not a standalone process. You need to emphasize and evaluate all these factors and all these internal metrics that you have collected insights during your product development. So here we come to the main question on the marketing strategy: how to acquire the right users which will pay and use your product. Here we come to this overall marketing strategy. And despite the fact that I will focus more on the organic user acquisition today, it is very important thing to understand. Does more users mean more revenue? And here we can see the clear division of the products. So there is two types of the products: free apps with ad monetization model and paid applications which has subscription or in-app purchasing model. So why this is important is just because you need to highlight different metrics while acquiring the users. So speaking in examples, here I have, for the first type of the product, here I have one of the most, I think, largest hyper-casual games developer, Voodoo. So here we have two applications of this publisher. And on the other hand, we have two applications from the health category, the meditation application, Headspace and Calm Apps, where guys has the subscription model of monetization. So speaking basically about the differences of marketing strategy for these two kinds of products is that probably for the first type, the CPI and the cost of user acquisition will be much less than the second time, just because it doesn't matter what users are doing inside your application after they downloading the application. And comparing with the second part of the second type of the products, we need to definitely take care about whether users will pay for the product in future or not. So this is a very important division that we need to keep an eye on. This model is actionable both for paid acquisition channels and also for organic channels. And that is why it's just the thing that you need to take into account while acquiring the users. And coming to this precious organic users flow. So basically, organic user acquisition is App Store optimization. So the ASO is one of the most important thing how you can acquire the users. We have there working on the conversion, for example, the graphic assets optimization or keyword optimization, which basically contributes in your search part of the organic traffic. But basically the flow, the user flow from the App Store and Google Play is more or less the same. There is impression, then the page view, install, and of course, first session. But there is a big difference between the App Store and Google Play, which basically stands for the impression statistic. As we all know, Google Play, unfortunately, do not count these impressions. So this factor, this metric, we have only in App Store Connect, and actually not even any MMP partners platforms show this statistic. So we can find these figures only in App Store Connect. And here's the main difference. At AppFollow, we have lots of clients, and some of them are Android first. So basically, this means that they develop and focusing on the Google Play. But, and they get used to track the conversion rate as a proportion of number of page views to the installs. And while they are trying to get on the App Store market, they starting to do the same thing. They measuring the conversion rate in terms of the proportion of the number of page views to the installs. And this is not something correct thing. So let us take a look at the flow that we have in App Store. So moving from the left to the right corner. First of all, of course, we have an impression. So basically, impression counts if the application is on the screen more than 1 second. Here we count as impression. Then user basically has two different flows. First of all, they can download the application straight away from the search, or to go deeper and to open the product page card and download the application from there. Then, of course, we have the fact of install, and of course, the first session, first open of the product. And if we take a look at figures that like each product has internally, this is a very often situation when the number of page views are less than the number of actual installs that you can see in your App Store Connect analytics. Why does this happen? As soon as App Store is not probably that much going deeper into analytic, they count installs as a fact of pressing on the install button, and they do not have the division where these installs particularly came from the impression, so from the search page or from the product page card. So the right conversion rate to track is the proportion of impression amounts to app units, to downloads, because lots of downloads are coming directly from the search part, from the search list. And this is the right conversion to track, the right decision to understand whether your graphic assets are performing or not. For the big brands, usually we have, like if we track the conversion rate from the product page view to the install, very often figures are more than 100%. So this basically means that lots of other users like installing your application from the search. So this is the huge difference between Google Play and App Store, and you definitely need to take care of it and to track right conversion to make right decisions. Moving forward, the also important thing I want to highlight here is the difference between the install and first session. As I already said, both App Store and Google Play track as install the fact of clicking, of tapping the install button inside the stores, but they do not measure the first session as an install. So that is why it's very important to compare those analytics, those statistics that you have inside the consoles with your MMP platform, because there you will find the real figures, the real installs that your app has from the specific store. And this is also a very important thing that sometimes probably can be like ignoring, but I definitely recommend to compare these figures. The one thing that I also want to mention here is that there is a problem with attribution, and if App Store and Google Play count as install the fact of the new user, but MMP platforms count also re-downloads. So sometimes you can see the big difference between these two different types of analytic platforms, and you will see the more installs that are coming from the MMP stuff, because they counting also re-downloads. So this is only also one thing you can you need to take into account, because for big brands this is a big issue. Moving forward to the organic search part. Organic traffic divides into two groups. First of all, this is search, which basically coming from these keywords optimization thing. And the other type of the traffic is browse, which basically coming from featuring, different top charts, categories, etc. So here I want to highlight how you can contribute and how you can improve your search traffic. So I have many clients who are asking and who are coming to us with a problem as like, we have lots of ranked keywords, but we do not have lots of search installs. Why do I have this situation? So this is actually one big pain that ASO managers need to struggle with. Not always the lots of number of keywords that your application is ranked by means that you really will get these downloads. It is very essential to keep an eye on those keywords that you're ranked by. So for example, if they're not popular or not relevant keywords, of course you will not get any downloads from this. So while analyzing this thing, a very important thing to track is the search visibility score. So this is the internal metric that we offer, at AppFollow offer for our clients. Basically, we calculate this score taking into account all keywords that are ranked for your application, dividing them into huge formula with such metrics as the popularity of these keywords and your current ranks and positions by each keyword. So the highest ranks you have by the most popular keywords, the more search visibility score you will get. So this means that you will get more downloads from the search. There is a quite often situation, especially for the apps that are just released and they are fresh, that the first thing they need to do is to get ranked by lots of keywords, as many as they can. But after that, after your app already has the history, you need to acquire more quality, more useful search traffic. So this means that you need to contribute in your search visibility score. Moving forward, also important thing to highlight here is the reputation management. Why rating is important. Recently, the ASO becoming more complex. So if, for example, a couple of years ago, ASO was like working with keywords or like with the conversion rate, now store algorithms becoming more complex and also taking into account this rating and reviews factor. So here I have the screenshot of two different ratings. We also calculate this internally in our system, in our platform. So the first average rating you can see in the stores. So basically these are figures that you and users can find in the stores. There are differences between different ways how Google and Apple calculating these ratings, but still you will see this figure in the store. But the second average rating we calculate internally, and we take into account only those ratings which has the text inside, so the reviews part. And what's the main difference and how you can work with these two different parameters. So first rating, the average rating, actually means the satisfaction score of the users that are using your product. And also this means that you choose the great moment for store rating prompt if your rating is high. And this is something that you can work with if your rating is not that high. For example, this is the call to action to work with this rating window. And the second rating is actual pain of the users. As we all know, unfortunately, like more than 80% users who are writing something in the store most probably will be the negative content. So it will be reviews, for example, 3 stars or even lower. So here is you can find the real insights about your product and the real issues that you have. And this rating, you also can, first of all, contribute by replying to reviews, by solving the problems that users emphasizing there. And of course, the big advantage here is that no one except you see this score, and this is something you can promptly react on and fixing the problems there. So different types of the ratings and different ways how to react on this. So in first case, we have the issues with this moment of this rating prompt, and in the second case, we have the real issues that your product has. The situation works vice versa. For example, here we can see the real screens from one of our clients. On the left screen, you can see the overall rating. And as you can see, the trend, the red line, is declining. So this basically means that the app start to collect lots of negative stars. So for example, 1 star or 2 stars. And this means that probably something is wrong with this moment of rating prompt. On the right screen, you see the trend of rating with reviews. And as we can see, it's starting to improving. This means that these guys are working promptly with all this negative content that they can see inside your application. So this is like how these ratings can correlate. And this is the real case. So it's definitely 2 separate things you need to track on. If I would be advisor for this project, personally, I would recommend these guys to improve this window or probably play around with these different moments of showing this window. And they may affect on the amount of stars they are collecting. So to sum up everything that I said, first of all, it is very important to understand that marketing is not a standalone process, and you definitely need to track all these metrics that you receiving from your product after user download your application. So of course, marketing has some specific KPIs and specific metrics as CPI, CVR, etc. But of course, we all need to acquire right users, the precious users. So that is why you need to go deeper in the product and analyze what is going on with these users after they install the application. The second thing is it is very important to define the right marketing strategy in terms of the specific of your product. So taking into account the model of your app, whether it's free or whether it's paid application, you need to acquire and implement the different marketing strategies. This is actionable for both paid and organic traffic channels. And of course, if we're speaking about the organic acquisition, track the right conversion, especially in the App Store. Also, use the correct install statistic and always compare all these sources of analytics that you have, because you may find some interesting insights in terms of this. Speaking about the search traffic, research the search visibility changes, because this factor basically means how discoverable, how visible your application is in the store. And not only track the keywords movements, not only try to be ranked by as many keywords as you can, but also keep an eye on the search visibility score. And at the end of the day, track both average rating by reviews and average rating that you can see in the store, because there you might find some real useful insights for your product and promptly solve everything which is connected to this.
So MoEngage is a full stack solution. It has customer analytics, customer journey orchestration, and personalization in one dashboard, right? So if you're a customer obsessed marketer who want to spend more time crafting great experiences for your customers, and then crafting personalized experiences for your customers, instead of spending time switching between multiple tools, you can do your customer analytics, cross-channel engagement and personalization in one single dashboard. All right, so that's the 30-second sales pitch about MoEngage. Thank you. So I'm going to start on with the presentation. So Anna brilliantly explained a few practical examples of the right way and the wrong way to define some of your North Star metrics, specifically with regards to user or customer acquisition. I'm going to try and extend that a bit into the customer lifecycle beyond acquisition. Because growth doesn't stop at acquisition, right? Growth happens when your customer comes back and purchases from you regularly, or if they subscribe for a longer period of time, which means we need to have the right set of metrics that can impact the customer life cycle from acquisition, onboarding, engagement, and long-term retention. Now, I'll walk you through a couple of examples of how our customers go about defining these North Star metric or key growth metrics or real metrics, whatever you want to call it as. And this is based on our learnings from working with several customers, enterprises to high growth mobile first startups and unicorns. Now, really the first step is to try and identify the right North Star metric, right? Now, how do you define it? Now, typically what happens is teams use North Star metric to get everyone in a company focused on one goal, right? So you can call it by multiple names. You can call it North Star metric, goals, KPIs, OKRs, growth metrics, whatever you want to call it as. But irrespective of what you call it as, it is mainly used to make sure that everyone in the company, or at least most of the people in the company, are focused on one goal. So that's really the purpose of defining this. Now, when we define, the North Star metric, and Anna already gave several examples around this, right? So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to indicate what are the characteristics of defining the right metrics, right? So let's take an example, and let's take an e-commerce example. So we have one metric, which is weekly active users, and the other metric, which is monthly orders delivered. Now, there are three characteristics of a good, growth metric or a North Star metric, right? So one is it needs to align to customer value and the journey. The North Star metric or the key metric must be derived from a true understanding of what action provides realized value to the customer, right? So we need to get as close to impact as possible. So this means that, measuring things like daily active users, registered users, they are, they indicate certain things, but they're not really great, North Star metrics or a key growth metric, right? Because they say absolutely nothing about what your customers value about your product, right? It just tells you that, look, people are actually, coming back to my app or coming back to my website and doing a bunch of, things. Your key metric or your North Star metric also needs to have an organization impact, like a revenue impact, right? It could also be a profitability impact, but this depends on what your organization goal is. Now here it's important to understand that it should be a leading indicator of future success. So it should be a leading indicator of revenue. So we can't have revenue as a North Star metric, right? Because by the time revenue comes in, it's already too late, right? So ideally you need to define leading indicators which have a correlation between your monthly revenue or the average revenue per user, because this will tell you that, hey, if I move this metric, there is a very high likelihood that my revenue and my average revenue per user is going to increase later on, right? So we need to get further upstream from revenue and the organization wide metrics, right? And third, it's obvious, it impacts or it represents your product strategy. End of the day, what do you want? What do you really want to achieve with your product? Now, typically, customers, what they do is, they brainstorm. They have an internal workshop, with all the leaders, with all the key members of different departments, from marketing, sales, product, customer service, etc. And typically, companies with complex business models, they typically have multiple North Star key metrics, right? So it's very rare that companies have usually one sort of a key metric or a North Star metric. Typically, they have few metrics, not too many, because then it becomes unmanageable. But typically companies have anywhere between 2 to 3 North Star metrics, and then they sort of break that down into sub metrics. Now let's actually go one level down and talk about how this translates into the daily use, right? Now in daily use, you can break down your North Star metric that drive accountability and ownership at the individual level, right? Now if each team defines goals differently, then they can work against each other. And many of these sub-metrics, the tier 1 and tier 2 metrics that we can define, they are usually team specific and actionable. Now, typically our customers, once they identify a North Star metric or a key growth metric, they translate that into tier 1 and tier 2 metrics across different teams. And tier 1 and tier 2 can be considered as input metrics, right? So in other words, if several of your input metrics improve, then there is a high correlation that your North Star metric will improve, right? The caveat is, look, this may sound very simple and then common sense, but a lot of companies do find this challenging, right? Because usually two reasons why companies find this challenging. One is the culture aspect of it. Companies need to have the right culture. So the importance of this need to be driven down from the top, from the CEO level and downwards, because without the cross-silo relationships and a willingness to prioritize the company goals above the team or the individual goals, typically employees or typically team members may sort of reject this framework. And this is especially true in more traditional mature organizations, which are being disrupted by changes in the digital consumer behavior, right? Because if employees have to change their behavior significantly, there will be resistance. And sometimes we also need to make sure that the compensation or the goals of the individual team member aligns with the North Star metric, right? So if there's a person who's measured on, let's say, NPS scores, while the North Star metric is number of weekly transactions, then there is going to be conflict. The second challenge usually is the companies we've seen, they lack the right set of tools, right? To set North Star or key growth metrics, we must have a pretty good understanding of our customer journey. We need to understand their likes, dislikes, behavior, preferences, the entire customer journey. We need to understand the journey paths of our customer segments, understand the stages in their journey. How are they using our product? Which features, functionalities are they using within the app? Why are they using it? So we need to understand all of this. So we need to uncover this relationship between customer actions and the North Star metric, right? Like for instance, when Facebook started in the initial stages, I think it was pretty popular. One of their North Star metric was that we need to get users to add 7 friends in the first 10 days, right? Now that's very specific. How did they arrive at this conclusion? And typically they arrived at it because they analyzed the user behavior, actions, and saw that users who added 7 friends in 10 days usually became active and long-term users of their product, right? So the right set of tools will help you uncover this. Now let's actually take an example of how this plays out, right? So let's consider again an e-commerce company, and let's say that the organization has brainstormed, they have the right set of tools, and then they've said that okay, let's try to move the weekly purchases or weekly buyers as a metric, right? Now so let's assume that they've defined this. In other words, how many customers are buying products from my app or website every week. Now, the next step is to identify tier one input metrics at each stage of the customer journey that can influence the overall North Star metric, right? So, for example, to improve your weekly purchases metric, you need to make sure that you are acquiring the right set of customers, right? Like Anna pointed out. I mean, there's no point acquiring customers for them to churn within day zero, right? It doesn't make sense, right? So these are customers who can actually purchase products from you once they install your app. And once you acquire these customers, they need to navigate through your product categories, your product searches, add products to their cart, and actually complete their first purchase. And once they complete their first purchase, you need them to come back to your app or website frequently, right? To ensure that they stay engaged with your brand. Because engaged customers are more likely to buy frequently from you, right? So here's how we can actually break down this North Star metric into tier one input metrics, right? So you can notice how this has been cascaded down to map the customer journey, as well as the different departments that are mainly responsible for that stage of the customer journey, right? For example, at the acquisition and onboarding stage of the customer journey, one of the input metrics you can measure is percentage of new users who complete a transaction within the 7 days of app install. Right? So if you improve this percentage, then you'll have higher number of weekly purchases. Similarly, at the engagement and retention stage of the customer journey, one of the input metrics can be users who are actively engaged on my app in the last 30 days, but have not made any purchases. Right? Now, customers who are more engaged are more likely to respond to your promotions or communications. So if you increase the number of users who are recently engaged with your app, you will have an impact on your weekly purchases. Right? Similarly, you can also talk about how, another metric you can talk about is the average revenue per user or the customer, right? So if you already have customers who are buying from you once a month, can you increase their purchase frequency to once a week instead of once a month, right? In other words, if you increase your revenue per customer within a 30-day window, you would have most likely impacted your North Star metric of weekly purchases, right? So this ties back to the point I made earlier that a good North Star metric should tie back to revenue goals, right? Now, you can define input metrics for these tier one metrics, which we can call it as tier two metrics, right? So the idea is that, again, if you improve your tier two metrics, it should impact your tier one metrics as well, right? So for example, if you acquire the right set of users, more users, if you acquire them every week or every day, you should potentially be able to increase the users who actually buy something from your app between day 0 to day 7. If you increase the time that the users are actually spending on your app, like it could be session count, session length, you are actually increasing the probability of them purchasing something from your app, right? Similarly, on the engagement side, if you're measuring if you increase your DAU by MAU ratio, there's a very high likelihood that your retention rate will increase, right? Similarly, if you decrease churn rate, there's a very high, there's a very high likelihood that your retention rate will increase. Similarly, if you reduce cart abandonment rate, there's a very high likelihood that your retention rate will increase. So basically, this sort of a framework can get very complicated, even though it looks simple, especially when you're working in a large organization or even in a fast-growing organization. Because one, when you cut this across the multiple products, multiple geographies, multiple departments, this can become very complicated. And if you're in a fast growing organization, this metric will change every 6 months, right? Because you'll never get, we will never get this right the first time, right? This is always a process of evolution. So every 6 months to 12 months, we'll end up defining a new North Star metric as we uncover more and more about our own customer behavior. But the point is to sort of start this with some sort of a framework so that we are all working towards one goal as an organization. And it can become a bit and also, if you don't have the right set of tools, sometimes tracking progress for this can become a bit more challenging, right? Because if someone is responsible, let's say, to improve the cart abandonment ratio, and if that person does not know how their marketing activities are impacting the cart abandonment, and if that person is not aware of how the cart abandonment rate is improving on a week-on-week basis, they're just flying blind, right? So it's really important to have the right set of tools as well to sort of make sure that the entire organization aligns with this. So what I'll do is I'll just quickly show you a couple of videos on the product side, just to show what the right tool looks like when you're actually trying to do this. So let me take an example. Let me take this. So if you have the right tool, so with MoEngage, what I do is I just go in and I say, show me all the people or show me all the users who have executed a successful order. And then I'll say, let's filter that basis the people who have actually installed the app within the last 7 days. So I'm considering people who have installed the app in the last 7 days and have completed an order. And the time frame for that is going to be, let's say, the last month, right? And when I click on it, I can pretty much run a report which gives me this data. So when you have this kind of a data, it becomes easier for the entire organization to sort of align and share this data. So I can show a couple of, one more example. Like for example, let's say cart abandonment rate. Right, so I can add these steps within my app. So I can say, show me people who've opened the app, and then who have viewed a product, and then who have added that product to a shopping cart. So I'll select add to cart, and who have actually gone through the purchase, right? Who have actually completed the purchase, and show this for the last, let's say, a week or so. And there you go, right? So you can clearly see there's a drop off at each step of the cycle, at each step of the customer journey. And if if one of your team members is responsible for improving this, you can clearly see week on week or even in real time saying, hey, is this ratio actually improving or not? And one of the other things about, there you go. And one of the other things about MoEngage is, so the person who's responsible for improving this ratio, they can actually select this segment here, the people who have abandoned the cart, click on create and add them into a campaign right then and there, right? So it, having the right set of tools makes it really easy to not just measure and make sure that everyone is on the same page, but also to target these users in one go, and whether it's targeting them through web, email, push notifications, in-app notifications and whatnot. So yeah, so that's really what I had in mind. Now, if you don't have the appropriate tools, what you can also do is you can get started with spreadsheets, even though it will be a little bit more complicated. We have created a framework or templates. We will be sharing that with you in an email after this session. Do keep an eye out, or I think we can also drop that link in the chat window here. That also, you can download it right now. We've created templates for OTT, which is streaming media and e-commerce, but you can convert this for finance, hospitality, gaming, etc., because the fundamentals is not something that's going to be very. We would also be happy to showcase and walk you through the process of setting up these metrics and dashboards for your team using the MoEngage dashboard. So do let us know. We've created a poll for you. We'll give it about 10 seconds. So if you want us to, have like a one-on-one discussion with you to sort of help you figure this out, we'd be more than happy to do that. We'll start taking questions now.
As I mentioned in my part of the presentation, average rating is something that stores are taking into account while they while promoting the applications, because we spotted that, for example, in Google Play, there are two benchmarks. First of all, it's 4.0 and then 4.5. And if the application hit this benchmark, this product will start to collect in more installs, because Google will push you in organic search terms, first of all, and second of all, you will get more chances to get featured, to be ranked in the top charts, etc., etc. So now average rating become a huge part of the ASO, as well as the other product metrics. I think the first part, ASHWIN, is related to your presentation, because you show the churn rate inside your platform. Does it mean the uninstall rate?
Yes, so there's a couple of things. Depends on how you define churn, but universally churn is usually mentioned as uninstall. Yeah,
so that's why, like, in these terms, it's definitely also something that's influence also on your product, because Google Play and App Store starting to taking into account as well like retention rate and also the uninstall rate and the statistic of iron crashes into this store algorithm. So this is also the thing you need to take into account, not only in terms of your product statistic, but also if you see the increase in the install rates, you will see, unfortunately, the decrease in overall search visibility and overall store performance, because this is something that's taken into account by platforms as a negative side, and like, unfortunately, platforms start to shadow your application.
Excellent. So if no one has any more questions, thank you so much, everyone. This was, thank you so much, Anna. I really appreciate your insights, and it was great talking to you, and I hope the audience found it useful.
Same here. Thank you, Ashwin, and thank MoEngage for having me today. Thanks, guys, for joining us. Feel free to ask us in the email all the questions if you have some, but too shy to ask. So we are keep in touch.
Excellent. Thank you so much, everyone. Stay safe. Bye.